Hello and welcome back for episode 4 of the Minotaur guitar build, and this episode's a little bit all over the place with the things that get worked on. I'm starting out just taking a chisel to clean up some of the dried glue that's squeezed out of the boards here for the body, and then I'm going to take a random orbital sander and sand it all flat. Once this is all flattened, I'm going to use my template to draw the shape out onto the body blank, and then I'm going to go over to the bandsaw and get it all cut out. I'm intending to cut as close to the lines that I've drawn as I can. Again, this bandsaw blade isn't the greatest, so I can't go right up to the line. I have to make multiple passes and just get as close as I can. I want to leave at least a little bit extra so that I've got some breathing room to work with later on. Once I've gotten as close as I can with the bandsaw, I'm going to go over to my drum sander and clean it all up. I was using different sized drums for different parts of the body. Smaller ones to get into the areas like the cutaway, just because the bigger one obviously won't fit in there. There's definitely an argument to be made that in any guitar you design, never make a curve that's too small for the drum sander to get into. And now I finally get to do a little bit more work on this top that I glued up way back in the first episode. I'm not doing too much with sanding right here. I'm mainly just cleaning up the glue joint, getting any excess glue off of that so it's as flat as I can get it. The boards had a little bit of warp to them, and there's not a whole lot I can do about that. Just have to kind of work with it. And then I'm back to the bandsaw again to roughly cut out the shape. Again, getting as close as I can to the lines, but leaving a little bit extra so that I have some room to work. And it's funny, with this being solid ebony, you'd think it'd be difficult to work with, but given that it's only about 1/4 of an inch thick, the bandsaw just cut through it without any problems. So now that these are both cut out, I get to glue them together. Really, the only difficult part of this step is just making sure that the center line that's glued up on the top is centered on the shape of the body. But since these are both cut to essentially the same shape, as long as the top overlaps the main body all the way around, I'm pretty much where I need to be. So like I've done with other steps in this, I'm starting with quick clamps just to hold the top in place so it doesn't slide around when I start putting the stronger clamps on. And as you can see, I've got a nice pile of little clamping cauls there just to make sure that I don't leave any dents or marks in the wood. So now, just like I did with the fretboard when I glued that on, I'm going to use this flush cutting router bit that has its bearing on the top, and I'm going to run that along the outside of the main body to cut the top to the exact same shape. So once that's done, I'm going to go next to my drill press and start removing material for the neck pocket. Just using a Forstner bit. I forget exactly what size Forstner bit this is, but I'm just using that to work out most of the material before I go back in with a router and a routing template to finish it off. Alright, so now that that pocket is cut, I can do a little bit more work on the heel of the neck. And the first thing that needs to be done is, I noticed that the heel is too tall for the pocket that I've cut. And I don't want to cut the pocket any deeper because then there just won't be enough material of the body left at the base of the neck. So instead I'm using the bandsaw to cut off some of that material. Then I've got some adhesive-backed sandpaper that I just stuck to the table there. I'm using that to flatten off the bottom of the heel. And once I've done that, I'm going to come in with the radius block. This is a 12-inch radius, and I'm just going to carve that into the fretboard. It's a fairly boring and time-consuming step to carve in the radius like this, but so now that the heel is where it needs to be in terms of thickness, I've got a line drawn on there. It's a little hard to see on camera, but that line there is showing where the joint with the body ends. And I'm using that as just a reference point so that I know how much I need to carve away here to get it all to line up the way I want. And of course coming in with the smaller endomorbital sander to clean up the tool marks. And you can see here I'm coming in, I'm doing a little bit more shaping on the body. I left quite a bit of excess material on that side of the neck pocket there. And I don't really want all of that to still be there, so I'm just working it down slowly and carefully. And once I get pretty close, then I'm going to come in with this marking knife and just carve it away. And then just a quick test fit of the neck in the pocket. Looks like it fits. Next up, I'm working on the plate for the front of the headstock, using some of the offcuts of the ebony from the body. So here I need to cut away a little bit of that material from the headstock plate so that I can put a cover in place where the truss rod will be that I can remove in order to obviously access the truss rod if need be. Just carefully removing the material on the bandsaw. Being particularly careful because this is a thin piece of ebony that I'm working with. I want to make sure that, just the stresses of having it run into the bandsaw don't crack the piece or break it or anything like that. And it's hard to see on camera here because I was working a little out of frame, but I'm tracing the shape of that hole that I just cut onto another piece of ebony offcut so that I can cut out a piece like this and do a little test fit. It's a little bit wide, so I'm going to sand down the edges until it fits perfectly. So I'm just about ready to attach that to the headstock. I'm just going to widen out the opening for the truss rod access a little bit. And this won't be visible on the final guitar unless you actually take off the truss rod cover, but it still comes out pretty cleanly. It's a quick little job with the Dremel. And then I get to glue on the headstock plate. It's a little difficult to spread the glue on such an oddly shaped piece of wood. And again, starting with quick clamps just to hold it in place. Double checking to make sure it overhangs everywhere, so that I'm not having to totally reshape the headstock to make it actually fit. Using lots of clamps, probably too many clamps, but I want to make sure there's even pressure all the way across it and there aren't any gaps forming. And since this is a little too awkward of a shape to get over to the router table to clean up the edges of this, I'm just going to take it to the drum sander. And considering that both Ebony and Padauk are pretty dense hardwoods, I'm not particularly concerned about severely altering the shape of the headstock by using the drum sander to clean it up. On softer woods that might be a bit of a risk, but this came out really well. And then I'm going to mark out where I want to drill for the hold so that I can get the screw through the truss rod cover. And that is going to do it for episode 4. And it's kind of all over the place. But hope to see you back for episode 5, and thank you for watching.